I spent the first 3 days of the week in San Francisco, just basking in all of the love that was there. Met with a ton of Samsung execs uh, out of Korea, and that was the first time in, gosh, 2.5, 3 years that I'd spent an inordinate amount of time with them. Two main themes here: new Samsung Galaxy S23 and the derivatives, and also a new Ultra line of PCs. So, what's the one thing you can always expect at any premium smartphone launch? A focus on the camera. And it's important to end users. It's one of the main purchase drivers. And I'll be honest, from both vendors, Apple and Samsung, it's been a little bit of a yawner for me, but this one got me really, really excited. Okay, the 200 megapixel sensor, the improved, in particular, the AI algorithms. What they did for analysts, certain analysts this round, is they let us try the products before the event, and it wasn't some big mad rush afterwards when you're having to fight with a bunch of YouTubers to get in and actually use it. But they had this really thoughtful 3-story building in downtown San Francisco where you were able to use the S23 in different lighting conditions, different focus conditions. And Dan, it was kind of freaky how good the algorithms are when you get even to 100x zoom, and how it used to be pretty jagged. And by the way, miraculous, you could do 100x. But what happens now is AI comes in and then aligns all the pixels where it gets us closer to the DSLR capabilities. The remastering capabilities, particularly when it's coupled with that 200 megapixel sensor, is pretty wild. And remastering says, okay, I took it, 3x4, 200 megapixel. You take a picture. If you wanted to make it look better, you press a remaster button. You wait about 15 seconds, and literally it's applying all of these AI techniques. So really, really cool there. The second big announcement was the Samsung Galaxy Book 3. And I've always asked, hey, is Samsung actually serious about the PC market? It seems like they could do pretty well in it. They make a lot of the silicon themselves. They make the displays themselves. And there is the ability to go in and take share, and their channel strength, right? If you look at dishwashers, frickin' fridges, TVs, right? They carry weight inside of retail, the Best Buys, the Costcos, the Dixons of the world out there. So that's what they have going for it, but it just wondering why they didn't put the pedal to the metal. But the Ultra is a beautiful device. I'm told that I have one on its way. It looks kind of design-wise kind of close to a MacBook Pro with Windows and an Intel processor. But Dana, the demos of this 2x AMOLED display were absolutely stunning, particularly for content. And that was another one of these vignettes that they had in their experience center that I was pretty motivated about. I want to end on what I think was the third biggest story coming out of this, and this was the trifecta of vendors that TM Rowe put up there at the literally at the end. And where do you put your most important things you want to talk about? You put them at the front, and you put them in the end. So TM Rowe brought Cristiano Amon and Hiroshi, who runs Android for Google, up on stage to announce an XR alignment. But what he did before that is he allowed Cristiano Amon 3 minutes. Well, first of all, TM Rowe said the Snapdragon processor was the absolute highest quality, most efficient processor out there. kind of puts Exynos's future. You gotta absolutely question that. But announced there was a specialized processor called the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy. And what I can surmise is it's a frequency and probably a voltage boost on that, but what I would call a semi-custom processor. But they gave Cristiano Amon 3 minutes to talk about the processor, talk about the NPU, talk about the Wi-Fi, and the strategic alignment that the two companies have. And it was great to see what was announced, I think, in the fourth quarter of last year was the strategic alignment between the two companies. But this actually made it real, right? The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy, right? That is the brand of the processor, plus the alignment on the future investments in XR with Google. So a lot of words there. Hopefully I left you something there, Dan. You always manage to come up with something.
Well, you might have accomplished for the first time, leaving me legitimately nothing to add. I guess the only thing I'll say is read between the lines, people. The heads of Samsung coming up and basically saying better with Qualcomm is probably the most clear signal I've ever seen that their future revolves around that partnership being deeper, and that Exynos's long-term future is definitely in jeopardy right now. Apple, we talk a lot about. There's a reason Apple hasn't gone away from Qualcomm yet. There's a reason Samsung's leaning into Qualcomm. Sometimes it just gets it right, and it gets the right fit for the market long term. So I didn't attend Samsung Unpacked, Pat, but I do continue to be impressed with the innovation. I use both an Apple and a Samsung device. I look forward to seeing the S23 land on my door, and I look forward to playing with it. But no, I think that was a good way to wrap, Pat, and I think you hit it all on the head.
Hey, one final question for you is, I was thinking about the ramifications of the downturn. You have some companies in China. You have the Google Pixel folks who are doing their own custom SoCs, and I'm just wondering, how do you explain to senior management that you're spending, $200, $300, $400 million on a custom SoC when Qualcomm will make you a specialized processor for the right terms? It seems like that would be upside for Qualcomm, I think upside for Intel, and upside for AMD, and maybe NVIDIA. Just a thought, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Dan, at all.
You can go across every industry, Pat, and say that there's a little bit of a desire to build homegrown silicon to be able to feed the machine, and I guess over time maybe lower OpEx and drive some differentiation. But at the same time, to your point, is if it can be still function and act like that, and you don't actually have to do all the heavy lifting, which some of that, we've seen what ARM does with its instruction sets and being able to enable that in, like, say, the cloud for companies. But Pat, it's a great question. If this Samsung thing really takes off and is a success, there's going to be a lot of people answering that question to their bosses as to why they're spending, like you said, hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to try to build something from scratch when they could have something unique built for them. But sometimes there's a race to the top, Pat, and sometimes it's a race to the bottom. So
just from a volume standpoint, let's just assume let's put a $300 million number, and that's not a grounds up CPU. That would be more like a 500, 750. But let's just say a custom SoC, 300 million, you're doing 1 million units a year for that line, 2 million units for that line. You better be doing 20, 30, 50, right? To be able to make that payoff. And it's not a one-time investment. It's every time you want to open up that SoC, make some pretty big changes, that is what you're going to be doing. A lot of the expense is not necessarily in design, but it's in validation and test and getting down to the very end of it. But I think interestingly enough, for the biggest chip makers, I think they should be going in and having discussions at the highest levels of the companies doing their own custom silicon, saying, "You sure you want to do this? Maybe we can do something custom for you." I mean, heck, Marvell, AMD, and even Samsung have some pretty sophisticated custom capabilities. I've been kind of surprised to see that that again, it's really a frequency and a voltage difference. But that's a big deal for even Qualcomm doing something a little bit different.